Good afternoon and welcome to Analytics in a Day seminar. Today we will look at Microsoft new data warehouse offering called Synapse, and we'll discuss data warehouse landscape in general. And in the second part of this seminar, we will also look at the real product. We'll try out some workflows and let's see if my coding abilities are up to today's demo, and I can show you working stuff. So let's get going. My name is Toomas Mõttus, and I am in Prime and responsible for data services. So that means currently that we are working with SharePoint, Power Platform, and Microsoft Azure Data Platform Services. And I have been Microsoft certified for different Microsoft products and services now for more than 20 years. So probably I feel old when I tell it. But anyway, now my focus has been for several years working with data, as we are working in a in an age of data explosion, where you have new devices that are generating huge amounts of data, and all our business processes are getting digitized, and customers need more and more support on using the data for business benefits. And that's one of the reasons that Primand exists. That when we started Primand, we looked at the market as a complete system, and then we wanted to understand what is that what customers want. And we see that our customer organizations actually consist of people who want to make their organizations more successful, and we are here to help those people to find those ways how they can make their companies more successful and integrate data services so that those processes can be efficient and effective at the same time. And we try to use new technology there, because new technology offers usually new opportunities. If you want to be more efficient or more effective than you used to be, you probably cannot achieve it using old technology. And that's why we want to do it differently. We want to be always one step ahead, so that we can learn quickly from our mistakes and find those solutions that actually work for us, our customers, and help them to implement those technologies so that they can improve their businesses, to improve their quality of life also. And in our department-wise, we have infrastructure department, because we need to ensure that all the services, data services that we implement work properly, and we work a lot to Microsoft 365 products, and those include productivity products from Office 365 product range, but also enterprise mobility and security products, so that these cloud solutions that customers use are secure and monitoring works properly. And we also look at certification very thoroughly. We are Microsoft certified. We have several gold competencies. In this slide, I have put only 3 gold competencies that are important in current context, but we have several other also. And Microsoft has recognized our efforts now 5 times with Country Partner of the Year award. So thank you, Microsoft, for this recognition, but it's all up to our customers, and I think that our customers really want those new and fancy services, and that's why we are successful. And we do put much effort into creating those services reliable and also efficient. So, but what will we talk about today? So, first, we will talk about what's the landscape of IT, or what's the landscape that people in data services seeing, and how people's those ways how they do work have changed. Then we'll look at how this has impacted how data warehouses are being built, and when we understand those changes in behavior, we understand those changes in how data is managed. We will look at Synapse, Microsoft new data warehouse offering. That's actually a lot more than just data warehouse. It's a complete package of services for big data scientists and for business analysts. And we will also look at the real product. We will provision Synapse services. We will look how those services are integrated, and we'll do some coding and show how you can access those services and how those services are actually, how do you use them in real life scenarios. So that's a short introduction to our seminar. To those who are listening, our seminar is recorded, so if you want to come back afterwards and look what was going on, or you had to go and take a coffee and you missed something, then you can look at those afterwards. And probably we will also make a couple of breaks also, because our seminar time is quite long today, and I also need to drink some water once in a while. So let's get going. So what do you mean by expectations are changing? So, or what is the like change in environment that we are seeing? 10 years ago and 5 years ago, we told our customers that there was a lot of new devices that people were using. When cloud came along, at that time we said that, okay, you are using a mobile phone to access your data, you are using your computer to access your data, you are using your tablet to access data, you are using TVs to access data. Now we don't even have to tell about that, because it's a new normal. And actually, when you look how people's habits have changed, then now mobile device is actually the main device that you have. And if there's some kind of workflow that you have to complete that you cannot do on small screen, then you go to your computer and do it there. But the first screen you look at when you wake up, when you're having coffee, that's your mobile phone, and people, that's like the first device you use. But at the same time, when we see like devices coming along, we see also a huge amount of different services that are coming along. So if look back 10 years, then it was normal that company had all the services internally provisioned, and when you had internally provisioned services, your IT department couldn't provision a lot of different services. So, and usually service implementation time was also quite long. So when you provision new ERP, it was a year-long process. When you wanted to provision CRM, it was a year-long process. New email system, several months. Now, when you need to implement email system for a smaller organization, it takes a couple of hours. If you need to implement new sales CRM system in your organization, then all it takes is one person to go to one web service, cloud service, and just download the app into your mobile phone, and you are using it. And that has caused an explosion of different data formats. So when 10 years back, it was like some data formats. So you have some services that were coming, bringing data together. Then now you have a huge amount of services and a huge amount of APIs. Unfortunately, a lot of APIs nowadays are, I'll just say, standardizing on JSON, on Parquet format, on XML. XML is not that popular anymore, but you have those standardizations, but you still need to bring data together from a lot of different systems, because it's very easy to take one system into use nowadays. And that means that your central data management solution must must support all those different systems, all those different formats. And is it a small data set or huge terabytes or petabytes worth of data set, you still need to bring it together. And here Synapse provides a solution that you can start using from a very small solution to a huge solution where you have data warehouse reporting running on 4,000 CPU cores and really high performance stuff. So you can start small and grow basically unlimited. And that also has changed the decision workflow. It used to be so that you made decision once a week, but now actually you want to see your data all the time. You make analysis at your workplace afterwards, but you need to have access to your data all the time, everywhere. And that means that you cannot have some disconnected reporting service or a report in analyst computer. You need to have it always available in any time zone, basically. So that's also like the change of expectations that business users have. It's also normal that once a week or once a day, your analyst brought you a report on a sheet of paper. Now you expect it to be online everywhere, and the data latency maximum couple of minutes. If it's half an hour, then people are saying that, oh, it's like too old data, I need faster access. So you need kind of systems that can support those kinds of workflows. And Microsoft has provided several packages or even like sets of services for you to use in those new rapidly changing business environments, because let's be honest, COVID has changed a lot in how we do business, in how we collect data, and in how fast you must move when you need to adapt to new business situation and build a new solution. And here one of the great product is Microsoft's Power Platform that integrates systems starting from data entry, and also you can outputs have there, but it's Power Apps. Then you can automate workflows between different systems with Power Automate, and you have very powerful reporting system in Power BI. There are a couple of other products also in Power Platform. One is a bot service, and another is AI-based image recognition service that you can understand forms and products from your pictures. But those Power Automate, it used to be called Flow, Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power BI are the core products that you can use to rapidly build applications for business use. And as I said, that there is a host of different services that you need to connect your data to. Then this Power Platform has today hundreds of ready-made connectors to different cloud services. In this slide, I have a number of 250, and I have to admit I have been lazy. I haven't updated my numbers here for some time. I think it's close to 500 probably nowadays. And it's an open platform, so that if you are a cloud service developer and you want your customers to be able to integrate your cloud service with other services that customer is using, you can just go and define your connector for Power Platform, so that customer can go and take Power Platform into use and just connect to your service with ready-made dialog boxes. So that's the a power of this Power Platform, is that you don't have to be a coder to connect to external data sources. You can use ready-made connectors, but there's always a but, and a but in this sense is that sometimes you are not a business user. Microsoft says that Power Platform is for business users. It's a self-service platform. It's so easy. Anyone can do it. Of course, it's not completely so, because if you are talking about doing integrations, you need to understand how data works. You need to know how those logic switches work, how to do filtering in databases. You need to know how to read different data formats, and not all business users are capable of it. But you can start as a business user, and then as your requirements grow, you hire developers who are more knowledgeable in those technologies, and they start adding more value into your applications. But you can start small. You can start having value in those applications without making any huge investments in licenses, services. Because if you're looking at this Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power BI, then a free version of all those products is included in every Office 365, Microsoft 365 license. And if you need some additional capabilities for cooperation, then you start paying for those licenses. So it's very cheap to start. When you start adding more value, you have to start paying for it. And when you hire those software developers to do more complicated stuff on your data, to have more complicated or complex workflows, then Power Platform maybe is not enough for them. But then, as I said, there are buts. For developers, there is a host of data tools on Azure. And here I have just named those more important tools, more widely used. There are thousands of different services that you can use. And nowadays, even third-party applications you can find on Azure platform, and start using those third-party applications. If you're looking at those developer-grade tools, then you have here a data management service, Data Factory. It's an orchestration service, so that you can take data from one service, write it to another, tell that service to do some transformation on that data, then write the cleaned up data to another service. And Microsoft has added additional capabilities to Data Factory recently. So there is now, if you haven't noticed, there is a data flow capability that you can already within Data Factory do a lot of data transformation workflows, jobs, and those data transformation stuff in those data flows is based on Apache Spark functionality. So if you're thinking about how does Microsoft work with open source, then actually open source is integrated into a lot of Azure services. And nowadays, you can truly say that Microsoft loves open source. And additional services in data collection side, which I would like to mention are Event Hub and the IoT Hub. Those services are concerned with collecting automatically data from Internet of Things devices. Event Hub is a very simple service that just collects data. IoT Hub collects data and can also manage those devices on the other end. So a lot of IoT devices, you need to configure those, switch in on, switch off, has some kind of functionality, or switch some function on and off. So you can do this kind of stuff through IoT Hub because it's a two-way connector. And then you have Azure Functions, which is a small-scale application service so that you can build your data interface using Python or .NET and JavaScript and some other software, also, those programming languages also, so you can build small applications for accessing and bringing in data. And for developers who have some experience in Power Automate or Flow, then Logic Apps is a service on Azure side that adds new levels of power and customizability. Strange word. I don't know if it's actually a word. Customization options. Let's say customization options. Because if you are using this Flow, Power Automate, there you mostly can have you can mostly use those ready-made connections. In Logic Apps, you can configure your own connections. You can add into code additional parameters that you need to send to next steps. So you probably will not see those steps in interface, but you can access this Logic App code directly and add the additional configurations that you require. So it's extendable, and you also can have the version control and stuff which is not so good in Power Automate side. When you go to storage side, here are also a lot of services, starting from simple SQL Server. You can have Microsoft hosted old type SQL Server, or you can have Azure SQL database service. You have Cosmos DB. So people ask me often, what is Cosmos DB? Then actually what Cosmos DB is, there is a NoSQL database, document database, and that's what Cosmos DB is. But Cosmos DB has some additional functionality that ordinary NoSQL databases do not have. It has SQL language support, so you can access this extendable schema in Cosmos DB using SQL, those like select from, and using SQL language. So, and there is also usual blob storage and table storage account stuff. There is a data lake storage, now version 2, and also Azure data warehouse, which you can call Synapse now. It doesn't feature exactly the same service that data warehouse used to be. If you're going to, I will later show you Synapse, what it is, and there I will also show you parts that were previously called Azure Data Warehouse. So if someone tells you that Synapse is an upgrade of Azure Data Warehouse, then from product name perspective, that's exactly that. But from like functional and technical perspective, they are completely different products. So Synapse is like a huge step forward from conventional Azure Data Warehouse version 1, then version 2, whatever it was called at the time. And from analysis side, we have big data services in Microsoft stack, starting from analysis services, which people know from SQL Server packages. But new thing is Databricks that Microsoft itself recommends for data analysis. And this is like Azure version of Databricks. Azure Databricks is a packaged, a ready-made solution for using Apache Spark libraries and services. And Microsoft currently is integrating all that Apache Spark stuff into Azure Data Warehouse, Azure Synapse. So that's why I said that Data Warehouse and Synapse are different products, because there was no Spark support in Data Warehouse, and now in Azure Synapse, it's big part of the product. Okay, and here we have like this desktop support side, and actually Power Platform is mostly in this field in Microsoft picture in this right hand corner of that slide. So if you are a business user, you have been using Power Apps, Power BI, and other services in Power Platform, and you need to add more power to those services, then there's a huge amount of additional services that you can work with in the background to clean up your data, store data, and present that data in better versions, better with better structure. Okay, so as I said, we will now go to discuss a little bit what we discussed. How has business environment changed? What is like the product mix that Microsoft has for those new business, to tackle those new business challenges? And now we will look at a little bit what the data warehouse is and how it has evolved, and how have requirements to data warehouse evolved. So if you're looking back at like data warehouse, what it was some time ago, then data warehouses have been around for a lot of years. I would say that most of our employees are younger than data warehouses, and it's a good business tool to bring all data together and make it or combine the data into a structure that is understandable to business users. Because if you look back, you had like two types of databases. You had like transactional databases, and then you had those like data warehouse databases. And then the theory was that in transactional databases, you have to keep all the data as small as possible so that you can utilize as much your storage capacity. And in data warehouses, you clean that data up, you look at the data quality. If you have some missing information, you can replace that missing information so that your charts that you present to business users are complete and nice. So this is what is like the main workflow for data warehouses. And also, of course, it has to be secure. So data warehouse products include also user management and stuff, and this will also include in all new offerings. And if we're talking about Synapse, so we'll talk about it later on a little bit more deeply, then Synapse also integrates the same accesses into all the products that are combined into this offering, so that you don't have to separately configure your accesses or users, and you have very good visibility what's accessible, what's not, and who has access and who has not. So this is also a very positive evolution. I think the core stuff that you needed in this, when you're building a new solution, then one of the core things they need to build in is like how do you add value. So, and the main way how data warehouses added value was this data cleanup and structuring data into those easily understandable dimension and fact tables, so that if a user came in and wanted to see how your data relates to some kind of products, customer, regions, whatever you had those in those dimensions, then you just brought those like dimensions in, added data, and you got instantly nice tables, nice charts. And this was the main value of those data warehouses, but things have evolved since then, because this kind of structure was very good for ERP systems or CRM systems, where majority of data was entered by end users, and that means that if people enter data by hand, they cannot actually enter very much data. So you could easily structure it. You already did a lot of thinking on how to structure data before you started entering it, so that you wouldn't have to enter very much data. And if you entered data once, you use that data in as many possible scenarios as possible to minimize the manual effort of your employees. But when we are looking at new scenarios that we are seeing around in coming around in IoT, there we see a lot of data coming in that doesn't usually have much proper structure. You need to do analysis on that data. You have to like discover that data, that value or the structure in the data. And classical or like old-time data warehouses were not very well equipped for that kind of scenarios. And for those scenarios, these big data analysis, Hadoop kind of systems were built. And now Microsoft is adding that functionality into Synapse, into data warehouse offerings. So if we're looking at this like structure, what the structure is like, then we have, how to say, I would call it a reference architecture. So we have reference architecture where we bring data in. This is like data ingestion by Azure Data Factory. We bring data into data lake storage or directly to data warehouse. And then we do some kind of analysis. And then if we look like back a year or two, then Microsoft had in this data warehouse offering like this old-time SQL-based data warehouse, which was very similar to SQL structures. And to support those data discovery scenarios, Azure Databricks was used on Azure platform. And here you see that. So I forgot to click those. So maybe I will go back. Sorry for that. So this is like the scenario. If we're looking at like how nowadays people use the data, so they have different types of data coming in. They have on-premises data in data warehouses. They have those ERP data and device data. Then you use Azure Data Factory to bring that data in, and not just bring in, but you can orchestrate next steps there to clean that data up and to make into new nice structures. But for that, if you have big data, you use Azure Databricks. And when you have already structure that data very well, then you use Azure Data Warehouse to store it for business user consumption purposes, so that business users can go and use the tools they like. Is it Power BI or a Tableau or ClickView, whatever the product they use in this business side, they can connect to SQL Data Warehouse and consume already this very nice golden data. And so this is the thing I just talked about. And what Microsoft has changed the Synapse is that Microsoft wants to integrate all those reference architecture components into one offering, so that for a data analyst, no matter if it's a big data analyst or business analyst, it's one place where they can come, they see all the data and can do all the stuff, starting from bringing data in, doing this data exploration, finding that really golden part of the data and storing the data for business consumption in data warehouse. So this is what Azure Synapse is. Okay, then. Why is that required? So when we're looking at business perspectives, and these data scientists used to have quite different requirements for the data. They used to have different tools than business analysts, because when I look even like 2 or 3 years ago, then these big data or analyst or data scientist had what tools. They had those Hadoop clusters for storing huge amount of data. They used Spark platform in Databricks to bring it together, and business analysts at the same time were working mostly with ERP data, bringing that data in, putting it into structures, and presenting that data to business users. But the thing is that it had different challenges, starting from how do you secure that data? How do you make those workflows more transparent to everyone? And with the Synapse, you can, if you integrate those big data workflows and business analytics workflows, you bring all the data into the same security structure, and you can manage easily who can see what, and also have understanding on business user side, what do business users have access to. So and that means that in Microsoft terms, that means that you don't only have those SQL passwords, but you have Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, access control in all parts of the service, starting from data lakes to data factory and to data warehouse and all Spark things. Also, you can manage this data with accesses with Azure Active Directory. And of course, multiple workflows. So it's I think it's given now that you need to access those services. And sorry for that. Okay, but I think a lot of those what the slides here have is are repeating already what I told you in previous parts, and I said that BI and data warehouse come together with data science in Synapse. Let's go to this Synapse now and let's see in Azure what it actually is. So let's do a demo time. Okay, then I will open. I have here an Azure subscription, and I have created a resource group here for demo purposes. So it has my name here, just if anyone wants to know if they can delete it afterwards or anything, I put my name here. If you are doing your business resource groups for your business reasons, then it's reasonable to have a name that you understand, because we often had those like names here, like RS, like resource group, and then something else. And in the end, you didn't understand what it is. So nowadays, we always try to put as much information into resource group name as possible so that afterwards it's easier to manage. But let's have the service. And when we're talking about Synapse, then I told you that Synapse is not just data warehouse, it's a lot more. So if you're looking here, you have formerly SQL data warehouse, and then you have a workspace. And what we will start this provisioning with is workspace. So I think this is the most important innovation in that product line, that you bring all those different parts of data analysis workflow tools together into one product, so that you can access your data, you can define procedures with your data, and you can also define outputs all in the same place, in the same interface. And it isn't yet feature compatible with SQL Management Studio, but it's almost there. So if you don't want to install any additional software into your machine, or if we're talking about like larger organizations, then you may have very strict those computer configuration policies with Azure Synapse. If everything goes well, you don't have to add any additional software into your computer. You just need browser, and you can do everything in browser window. So let's do a workspace, Azure Analytics Workspace. And as I said, Analytics Workspace is still in preview. That means that it may have some kinks in it that we need ironing out, but it's usable. It works well. It's fast. So as much as I have worked with it, tried it out, it's quite good, and on the same level as those components that it consists of. So, and what it does consist of is it has a unified environment. So all those data factory workflows are brought together into one interface. You have databases, you have data lake storage, and all data sets and stuff, and different databases, or Spark databases or data warehouse databases. They are all in the same environment, even with logging, so that when you start working there, you don't have to exit this environment, and can work on all the data straight from Synapse Analytics. So it has Spark and SQL engines, data lake. It has streaming support also. Integrated AI and BI means that there are like AI libraries in Spark. There are additional AI services in Azure that you can integrate into Synapse. And code-free orchestration here means data factory. So you can use data factory to bring data in and do data transformation there. And choice of languages. So as I said, even if you are using like NoSQL, you can use SQL language in Microsoft services. You have support for Python in Spark. in Spark you can also use Scala and Spark SQL. And what Microsoft is bringing into Spark now is .NET support, so that all those developers who have been using .NET and building their solutions on .NET can also very soon reuse their knowledge in Spark using .NET language. So it is definitely an interesting development. I myself, as I'm not much of a developer or programmer, so I'm not .NET person. I like SQL more or less, and I like Python because it's easy to work with, but definitely not .NET or C#. So kudos to everyone who really knows how to work with .NET. Okay, let's start the workspace. So we have here some workshop workspaces. Let's say that I will also say Thomas. It has to be small, but really, I have created some test workspaces. We cannot reuse that name, so Thomas workspace Synapse. Let's see. Is it unique? It is unique. Yes, we are rocking, I would say. Account name for data lake storage. Thomas Synapse storage account. Let's say. Oh, sorry. And file system. Let's say it's big data. Okay, only lowercase. Okay, usual stuff here. Big data. Let's see. Seems it's okay. Yeah. I will be contributor. Next, we have need for a password. Let me see. I would like to reuse a password I tried in testing. I will copy that from another window. Okay, so it is okay. And okay, let's enable a word network. And currently I will allow connections from all IP addresses. And I allow it currently because I will not take time here to configure firewall, but when you will create this Synapse workspace for your own purposes, I would recommend you to uncheck it and configure later on from Synapse firewall settings accesses to your locations. If you want to, due to COVID situation, you are working from home and want to manage Synapse from your home, add your home IP here, your office IP, and then you can go and manage it, because you will be bringing really confidential stuff into Synapse workspace, and it's never reasonable to have too many points of access to your data. So limit it by firewall so that not anyone can connect. But if you make those firewall settings, keep in mind that if you add some additional services or you want someone new places to connect that data, then you have to add those firewall rules to those services. Otherwise, they will not work. Okay, and let's see what kind of tags we can have here. So for reporting purposes, we will have here, let's say, financial reporting department will use that Synapse workspace. Next, time for a sip of coffee. Okay, we don't have any billing information available here, which is fine. And create. And now it will take about 10 minutes to create that Synapse workspace. And as it said that there is no billing information available, maybe we should go to Azure billing site and look up how much does this Synapse stuff cost, and Azure pricing, and we have pricing calculator, and let's see if we have Synapse here. We have Synapse Analytics. This one we can delete. Oh, we deleted everything. Okay, I will add it again. So this is a Synapse Analytics price. Let's make it into euros. And here I have to say that this is actually not correct price, because this is a product that we used to call as data warehouse. It's a SQL Server service. If you are provisioning Synapse, the workspace, then what Synapse workspace actually is for free. You don't have to pay anything for Synapse workspace. Together with Synapse workspace, there will be provisioned storage. You have to pay for storage, of course, if you start storing data there. And when you are provisioning different SQL and Spark services, then that's what you have to start paying for. And later on in this into this environment, we will also provision SQL pool, and the SQL pool is actually what was previously called Azure SQL database. And if you are familiar of previous pricing, then you know it was like managed in data warehouse unit blocks. And we will provision here 100 size, so that we have to pay 900 euros per month, but we will use it only a couple of hours and then switch it off. And one other thing with this Azure platform is that even if you need high performance data warehouse for your users, but for example, you need it only during business hours, then you can limit hours that is available. And let's say it's just like half of the time, and then you have to pay half of the price. But the thing is that you will create those data cleaning workflows with Data Factory. You are using SQL on demand to clean those data. This data, you will use Spark on demand to clean that data, and only for user presentation purposes you need data warehouse. So it can be a lot cheaper. And what we have been using actually to support our customer data warehouse requirements is that when we have done cleanup, we have actually used SQL database. And if you don't have much data, you can use just SQL database to work as backend. And if you have just SQL database, then for like 50 users or less that you usually have in analytics space, you can use, for example, this kind of is very usual performance level. So we will have this kind of number here for Azure cost. And that's one of the reasons that I really like Azure services, because you only have to pay what you actually need. If you don't need high performance data warehouse, you can take smaller service and pay for that. And to pay for a reporting backend, to pay 60 euros per month for reporting backend, that's for a company, it's peanuts. It's like nice business lunch in a old town restaurant. So it isn't that much. And but of course, if you need high performance, you can always scale and use larger services. So it's still provisioning. So let's go back to our presentation and let's see what's how Microsoft has bought those data warehousing stuff together. And the reason for bringing, one of the reasons for bringing together all those different services is that also data literacy has grown. So when we look at what is like the data literacy level of those people, or those, like, I wouldn't say children, but people who come graduating from school nowadays, then they have been building their applications since like second or third grade. They have been using those block building application style or workflow generation applications for 10 years when they enter labor market, and majority of current people in labor market don't have this kind of like long experience in data services, but new generation already has it when they enter this labor market. And those tools that we need to provide to this new generation have to be on the same level or even better than they expect. So we need to provide those people tools from business side, Power BI, Power Apps, and those Power Automate stuff, and also to those who want to do more complex stuff and really go into programming with Azure services. So we need to have all those new workflows available, and stuff that we thought that were like space science, rocket science. This is like everyday stuff for new generation, and we have to keep that in mind when we are building those data services and making those tools available to business users. And we also have like these habits changing in organization, because when we had in-house services, then there was a lot of infrastructure involved in business building services, because when you needed some kind of file server, you had to have a server rooms, rack space, network switches, you needed to have a server hardware, then you needed to buy a server operating system, and when you had all those things, then you had client access licenses. So to build environment to just sharing files, you needed huge infrastructure investment already. But nowadays with cloud services, when you need to start sharing files, you just go to Dropbox or OneDrive, log in, and voila, you have ready-made file service. And that's the same thing as data services, that you don't need to build nowadays your data warehouse. You don't need to build your data warehouse cluster for running SSIS operations. You don't need to have some failover stuff in your office. You can all probably go and pick it up from Microsoft Azure without any like investment or upfront investment. So that's, I think, is what we're seeing at our customers that has closed this IT and business gap, because there is no IT in traditional sense. IT has become also a business user because they are just, how to say, a broker of cloud services. They are not like a person who is tinkering with serial port connections or plugging in USB devices. They are the ones who are actually building those services that customers need. Okay, and as I said, as literacy grows, you need those self-service stuff, because 10 years ago it was okay for a business leader if they got this report on paper once a month, once a week. But new generation of leaders that is just graduating from high school, from university, they will expect that they will have access to the data online all the time from every device, and we need those kinds of services here. And here, important part of this integration is Power BI and Synapse integration, so that you can manage your Power BI data sets directly from Synapse. You can use Power BI to connect to Synapse Analytics, and as Power BI is a reporting tool and it does not actually support all different file formats. For example, it supports CSV, it supports Excel somewhat, but it supports databases, but it does not support Parquet, for example, which is very usual in big data analytics scenarios. Here you need some tool that will do this Parquet translation cleanup for Power BI. And another thing with Power BI is that in Power BI, you have a limitation on how large your data set can be that you import into Power BI for reporting. And with Synapse, you can clean up your data, make it smaller, take out just the golden stuff from there and present that golden copy, like really important stuff to your Power BI users, not all the data, which is not much of it, what is not relevant, and it's also maybe not small enough to fit into Power BI. This data set that Power BI can handle. So it's integration into those new data models and stuff, which is really important. Another thing with Power BI capabilities is that if you build a small solution, then you of course can connect directly to your source data. But if you have more source data, as I said, Power BI has a limitation on how much data you can have in Power BI. If you're using Power BI Free, Power BI Pro, the limitation of data set is to 10 gigabytes. If you are using Azure Synapse Analytics, then I think we are measuring this limitation in petabytes. So you can use Azure to bring that amount of data down, and you can automate this process so that every time you have new data in your huge data sets, Synapse will go and clean it up and add to this golden copy that Power BI uses. I have talked a lot about Power BI limitations now, but one of the things that Power BI has is flexibility for business users, so that how Power BI reporting usually works is that although Microsoft says that Power BI it's a self-service analytics, it's not completely true, because when we're talking about different data types, different systems, APIs, then usually business users are not savvy enough to make those Power BI reports or connectors to those services. But where actually this self-service comes into play is that when you already have those connections defined, you have defined your cleanup procedures, you have defined dimensions and facts for users, and made those like really nice first charts in your Power BI report. Then from that point on, business users can start going into self-service scenarios where they take that data and make their new reports themselves. And that's really important in my view, because if you are, for example, a service provider, you're not in-house, or you are not even the employee of that department in this organization, then you do not know like those all the important stuff that's important in that department, and those reports you are making are too generic maybe for that department. Then business users can come in and customize those reports to their specific purposes and add there some custom coloring to data, define their own measures that are based on data you have gathered, and they can create those visualizations that actually convey important information to the people in those departments. And you as a professional business analyst, or even a person in a different department, you cannot like go there and live that life that those people live and understand everything that's so important to them. But with Power BI, you give them flexibility to customize those reports for their specific purposes. And I assure you that younger generation is not afraid of Power BI. They will open those Power BI reports and will change colors and stuff in those reports. It's no problem for them. So maybe his flexibility is important, and actually people are taking advantage of it. And with Synapse, you can, as I said, with big data, small data, structured data, not structured data, you can use all those Spark servers, SQL servers, all the technologies that are in Azure to bring that data in, store in those enterprise data models where you have properly defined dimensions and facts and present it to users. So, but let's go back to our Azure environment and let's see if we have now this provisioning completed. So did I really close that window? No, I didn't. Good. Okay, so our deployment is complete. Hooray. And now we can go to our resource. Okay, I will. Okay, I will go just back to this. As you remember, when we started provisioning this Synapse workspace, this resource group was completely empty. Now we have created Synapse workspace, and this deployment wizard also created for us as a place where we can store data and configuration information. So we have storage account here and Synapse workspace. Now, when we go into Azure Workspace, this is not that like this Synapse Studio yet. We have to click here to launch it. So this is how Synapse Workspace looks like. I will close that one and go back to this. So let's review what we have here. We have firewall. As I said, we selected an option where everyone can connect to our Synapse Workspace. So that means that start IP is 000 and end IP is 2525.2525. 255, sorry. So, but if you need to restrict access, you just create a new rule, enter address here and delete that one here. But we will not delete that one, and I will currently allow Azure services direct access to this workspace. Just to be sure that we can access it from everywhere right now. Okay, it didn't go well. And we have storage account generated. This is like address for storage account. If you this is dfs.core. If you have noticed, then most of the blobs are here is like storage account name .blob.core. So it is like a data lake storage. It's not like ordinary blob. We wrote that we will have big data as our file store name. We have SQL admin user defined, and we have me as Active Directory administrator. So, and here comes in this Active Directory part, and you can use those Active Directory accesses in every part in Synapse to add additional accesses so that you can manage those accesses afterwards through Active Directory. And we have SQL endpoint. So we have two SQL endpoints here. We have endpoint for SQL that we will create shortly because we don't have actually any SQL server here right now answering that endpoint, but we will add those resources. But we already have on-demand endpoint. So what Azure creates when you create Synapse Workspace is it will create this SQL on-demand service. That means that you cannot have any local database tables, but you can connect SQL Server to external data sources, external files, and show those files through SQL to end users. For example, you have a large CSV file or some other storage file. You define that file in your SQL on-demand system, and through that SQL on-demand, through using this polybase functionality, you can go and access this file directly from Power BI, for example. So these kinds of, this is very neat functionality. And we have Synapse itself. So now from this left hand side, we see that we have different configuration options here. We have firewall that we looked at, but we also have SQL pool and Apache Spark pool. So let's go to SQL pool. On SQL side, you see that we already have SQL on demand here available. But this is, as I said, you cannot have any internal databases here. And as you pay on demand, if you run some query and SQL on demand, you will pay for that, but otherwise it's in idle, and maybe it will consume some money, but it will be peanuts or cents in real terms. But if you run it, then you will pay real money for that. And but if you need to do those offer high performance queries to like results to end users, then you probably will need a SQL data warehouse. We will create here DVH pool. You can call it something else, and we will not take 1,000 units, because if you take 1,000 units, I think it will be extremely expensive. So let's see if I have, oh my pricing calculator. We had this SQL pricing here. So if you take 1,000 units of performance, then it's quite expensive, and hourly price is to have hourly prices 12 euros per hour, or almost 13. So, and if we run it for not like half a time, but all day long for 1 month, then it will be quite expensive. So, and we don't need that kind of performance in our demo environment. And I assure you that in most of business cases we have around in Baltics, none of those require those kinds of performances. Average, this is like already very high performance a data warehouse for business users. If we are not talking about like large enterprises, but if we're talking about like mid-size enterprises and even some utilities who are our customers are using performance levels that are actually lower than that one for their data warehouse reporting levels. So be sure not to over provision, because if you don't need that performance, don't pay for that. Microsoft people don't like me after these words probably, but just keep in mind that you can have really small services here, but not directly in Synapse. You need to bring those connectors in if you're using usual SQL servers. So let's take this 100 level, sorry, and create. Yep. Okay. We will not use any existing data, and we will not add any tags. We could add, I had financial reporting tag there, financial department tag there, but it's not actually required. So our this SQL data warehouse provisioning has started, and let's go back and look at this resource. We don't have that here. This SQL data warehouse. We will see it. I think we will have it here in SQL pools, because we created a new SQL pool. And the thing with data warehouse is that it's not one single database server, one database. It's more that you have one set of data, but you have a pool of compute resources that you can use to access your data. That's one of the main differences maybe from this conventional SQL database to data warehouse offering, is that when you are provisioning usual SQL database in Azure, you are provisioning one server and databases on top of that server. But if you are using this SQL data warehouse, then you are basically provisioning one set of data storage disks where you keep your data, and then you like say how many compute nodes in parallel will this service use to access and to access your data, and what kind of performance level it will provide by using those compute nodes. So that's one of the main differences between ordinary SQL database and data warehouse database. And I think we will provision also Apache Spark pool also, because we need to look what's there. We cannot look what's there if we don't have it provisioned. So let's say it's DBH. Contain only numbers or letters. Okay. And we don't need so large server, and we don't need to auto scale it, and we need only minimum of nodes. Good. I think we are all set. So we will have the smallest stuff here because we are a small company right now, so we don't need that much resources. When we grow, we will use more. So it will has started provisioning, and let's go back to this resource group. One of the scenarios I would like to tell you about in data mining or data exploration is using Databricks. And when you start building your own data exploration environment, when you start using thinking about big data architectures, this Apache Spark platform is a very good starting point. It's a very good platform. It has a lot of ready libraries for you to go start implementing those libraries and doing your data cleanup procedures and running your model trainings and stuff there. And but it's quite tough to build that environment yourself. And here is where this Azure Databricks comes into play and provides ready-made environment that you can use to build your own data science experiments. And you know that data science that has to be very, very expensive. Yes, not always so. One of the things, if you go to this pricing calculator, let's add this Databricks also into our mix here. Databricks, Azure Databricks, yeah. Okay, let's view it. It isn't as expensive as Azure Data Warehouse, but it still costs something. And if you're not sure whether you should use data, this science stuff, and if it is something for you or not, or you just want to explore it, then even in those scenarios, 425 euros per month is quite expensive. One thing I would like to tell you is that in Azure Databricks, you definitely will need to pay for storage side. So if you store there some data, there will be a virtual machine for Databricks, and you will also store data in that virtual machine, but you can also store data in data lake storage, and there will be compute side. So if you configure your Databricks so that after you have completed your exploration data discovery process, you switch off your compute node, then you don't have to pay for this compute side. And this is one of those like Databricks units here, which costs you all 250 euros. If it runs 1 month, all the time, so you don't need to run it all the time. You can switch it off, and you should configure idle timeout into your Databricks so that you will not pay for it. But one of the things that's not in this pricing calculator is that you will actually have here, if you add yourself a Databricks service. Let's see, do we have overview of plans here? Oh, sorry, I have. Okay, let's start creation. And what is not like obvious right away is that you have actually in this pricing here, you have more options than in pricing calculator. Here you have just standard like level. Here, if you take this standard level, it will be cheaper, but it's still not for free. But here you have here also an option for a trial. You need see. So you have like for 14 days you have free trial of Databricks. You can try out. You can do your school assignments there. If you go to school, you can try out if big data is something that you want to build your career on. So you can go and provision those Azure Databricks services for free for 14 days. And just put yourself a reminder that after 14 days you will delete it. And then afterwards you can create a new resource that's also 14 days for free. So you can actually try those data exploration tools out until you find really something that adds value to you, that adds value to your business, and then you can go and change your pricing tier to paid to buy Azure Synapse service so that you will integrate all your workflows into. So just if you are not sure yet, use Databricks trial. There you can export your those notebooks also. So if you, for example, decide that you will do some data exploration, but after a week you have some other assignments, you need to do something else, and you are not sure when can you continue your exploration, just go and export your notebooks from Databricks, delete the resource, and when you have again time to come back to your Databricks and exploration, just go and provision new Databricks, so free tier, import your notebooks and continue from there. And I think this is a really great option for those who are interested in data analytics, in big data analytics, and want to explore it. Go and provision yourself a Databricks environment. Okay, now we have provisioned some services, and we see that we have Spark service provisioned. I think that's great. Let's see if we need to cover something from here also. Okay, so it's all about integration in Synapse. I think we have covered those topics more or less already, so it's like once more stuff. And now we have a structure of Azure Synapse here. And let's go to Synapse and let's see how that structure works actually in real life sample, how it works within Azure Synapse. Okay, Synapse Workspace. Let's open it up. We will launch Azure Synapse Workspace. So if you have used previously Microsoft Azure services, for example, you have used Data Factory or even Databricks stuff, then this how this interface is built looks quite familiar. You have your welcome screen, which probably, if you are more seasoned in this Synapse you will skip, and then you have your data sources. So you have like databases here. Let's see what kind of databases we have. So we have this database that we just created, and we have also storage here. So we will see what we have in storage. We have this big data resource with Synapse stuff within, and we have one database. So let's see what else we have. We don't have any SQL scripts or notebooks here. We will, if you create SQL scripts, notebooks, and new code into your solution, that will be stored here. Then we have orchestration side, and orchestration in product terms means data factory. So we can have a data factory pipeline here, and copy is just one data factory. It's like job. And we have reporting side here, so that we will see all data factory pipelines. We can trigger stuff from here, and we can also see SQL request history, so that we can go and understand what's going on in our system. So we see that it's all empty right now. And this SQL request history is actually one of the things that some of the people that I know who are doing SQL development are requesting, because in Microsoft SQL Management Studio you needed to use some like select from stuff to see history. Here you have it in your interface, so that you can go and see what kind of queries you have used and see what kind of stuff other people have done, so that if you need to repair something, you have a log here that you can go and look at. Then you have a toolbox where you see all your resources that you have configured. We have SQL pools here. We have SQL on demand. We will shortly create a database there. We have a data warehouse service. Then that is like a real data warehouse SQL server. We have Apache Spark pools that we have created here. We have one small one, and it's we have enabled autopause. I think that's one of the things you should do if you are coding in a coding like some kind of in a notebook code for your data cleanup. Then you might have longer like time slots, like a time between different like runs in your Apache Spark pool. You can increase that idle time, but 15 minutes has been fine for me. Sometimes when it's more complex stuff doing and adding more code, then maybe 30 minutes is better, because when you start to try to run it, when it has gone into idle state, it will take longer for you to see the results. So, and here we see also linked services. So we have analytics workspace and data lake storage here. We don't have any triggers in our data factory workflows. We have one auto resolve integration runtime. And what is this integration runtime? It's the service that when you are building your data factory workflows or some other workflows, sometimes you have to go and look at your data to understand what's there, so that you can test out, do I have access to my data? what is a data structure. If I define a delimiter in that data or some kind of structure in that data, when I use that structure definition, how does it show me that data? Then you use this integration runtime, but it will run in background. But I would suggest you enable interactive authoring so that you will see those results right away when you are developing, and it will also power down after 60 minutes so that you don't have to pay for those compute resources. But when you're developing, it's good to have that interactive authoring enabled, because you can look at your data, understand and why it's not working if you need to look at that. So I have enabled interactive authoring so that when I build my data factory workflows, I can see what's going down, what's the data like. So, and we have the security side of accesses. Now, let's go back and look what kind of databases here we have. We have one SQL database. Let's create a new one. New database on demand, and I don't know, let's call it Northwind. Northwind is a very popular company name in Microsoft, so let's create this database. It will take a couple of seconds. I will refresh and probably will see it right away. Refresh, and we have Northwind. And as you see here, we have two different types of databases. We have SQL pool database, which is let's say a typical SQL database. It's a data warehouse database, so it doesn't have the same like indexing capabilities maybe as transactional SQL, but it's a high performance tabular storage. And we have SQL on demand. So we have Northwind traders here. And when we look into those two structures, we will see that these are different, because here we have section tables, but in Northwind we don't have section tables. And that's the reason, because this DVH pool is a real SQL database where we can store tables, but this on-demand database is a database engine for accessing external resources, so that, for example, if you want to show your data in using SQL language, you want to show your tables or you want to access those tables in your storage, you can do it using SQL on demand. And you can also connect Power BI to SQL on demand and use those like defined tables that you have defined in Northwind on-demand SQL database. Now let's go and see what kind of storage you have. We have big data, we have Synapse here, workspaces, and we have Thomas Synapse workspace, and like warehouse. What do we have here? No blob containers. And what do we have in Spark pools? We have some Spark structures here, libraries. So probably, I haven't tried it, probably you can add libraries if you need to add libraries here, if you need to do some interesting Spark stuff, but you don't have library in Synapse, you can add it here. And we also have instances here. So let's go and add data. I think I will create I don't know what's the best practice here. Should I create my data here? I like to create new new storage blobs for my data. So it seems that I cannot create it here, but let me see if I have it here. Okay. Okay, I think I will create new. I will still create a new blob storage in the storage account. So if I go to Azure portal, I can still see the same structure because in the background it's typical Azure Data Lake version 2 data store. So we see containers here. This is a big data container that we have here. And I will add another container now. Let's give it a source data. Do we need some advanced stuff? I don't know why. I don't think we are good, I think. Now, I created additional storage here. Let me see if I can upload data here. Upload. Yes, I can upload data here already. And let's put our customers table. We don't have anything, but just in case. Okay, now we have new source data folder. We have file here with comma separated values. Let's go into Synapse. Let's see if we can see the same stuff here. So we have Synapse storage, we have source data, and we have customer CSV table or file here. So as you see, all like services that are in Azure are visible just from Azure management side and also from Synapse interface. Now we can preview data here, so it will go and look at my data. So it identified that I have column headers and it sees all the data properly. Nice. So we have here some numbers for contact persons, and we can also start from here directly a SQL script so that we will have a SQL style view. I don't know if it will run. It might, but it might not. Let me see, because I have seen problems with those like field terminator definitions. Currently, I see that field terminators were okay, and we got the proper response. I will leave that open. I think we will reuse that path here later on. So we have source data. What else can we do with this file? We can load it. We can bring it to a notebook. So when I click here, some Apache Spark magic will happen. And now you will see that it has, Synapse has created a Apache Spark notebook. It has created first cell in notebook, and it has selected this Spark server as a compute engine, and it has selected Python. So it seems that currently Python is a preferred language for using Spark in Azure. But there will be .NET support. I haven't tried it out, so I will not go into that territory. But let's run it and let's see what happens. It says that this Spark cluster seems to be up. It's green, so it shouldn't take much time, but it's telling me starting Spark session. That means that probably the Spark cluster has powered down. As I showed you before, there was this 15-minute timer. So if I run Spark engine and I do not use it another 15 minutes, it will power down and it will not consume compute resources. And that's just great for our purposes, because when we don't use it, we don't want to pay for it, and let it power down so you don't have to pay for it. So I think that's all good. So as it will take some time now to start up that compute engine, and we can go back to our source data and see what else can we do with that source data. So we can start a new data flow from here. So a data flow is also a Spark engine based let's see some other data set name, customer data set. It is a delimited text. So basically we are defining a data set here that we can use later on in this data factory and in data flow. So these data flows and data factory are complementing each other. Data factory is an orchestration tool. It doesn't have much tools within itself to do data transformation, to do data scientists like to say data wrangling. It doesn't have those like tools for doing data wrangling, but this data flow already includes those tools. So from within data factory, you can call out data flow, do some really fancy stuff with the data and write that output into a database or a file. So this is what data flow is, and I'm not 100% sure, but there are people who have told me that this data flow engine is also based on Apache Spark technology. So I don't know if it's true, but it sounds like reasonable, because Apache Spark is very powerful engine, and it's certainly fun if it's so. So let's create this. Let's see what kind of connector will be created. We don't have a guided tour. Sorry guys, we don't have a guided tour. It's a preview product, you know. It's not in production yet, so we don't have guided tour, but that's fine for me. So anyhow, now we have created a new data flow, and let's see if we can see those data sets. Yeah, see, when we started that from this data source with right click here and new data flow, the first step to create a data flow is that you have to define a place where you take that data, and that is a data set. Now, this first wizard that we had, that first wizard created this data set. Now we have a data set that we can use in our data flow. And now we can add additional steps into our data flow. For example, we can select some specific data, or we can filter out stuff and say that we just want one or another thing. But the thing what is important to the data flow. That is like a how to say, a independent step. So in the end, you always need to have some kind of output stuff where you put data in. When you have created all your data transformation stuff, you have to get a place where you store it. So for that storage, you will also need to have a data set that you will sync it, all that data into. So currently we have a dim customer data set, but when we need to store that data, cleaned up data, then we need to define another data set that we have to use as a target for our data. So this is like I think it's logical, but you have to keep it in mind. So this is like this data flow side. But let's call it, I don't know if it will give any errors. It might, because I haven't created any like real proper logic here. Publish, let's see. Okay. It doesn't let me publish it because I haven't created a proper sync here, so it hasn't validated properly. But it's not important in current context. I just want to show that these kinds of operations are possible, and you can add something in the middle, and from logic perspective, it looks very much like a Spark notebook. You just take and add one step in between, and then you just go and run notebook, and then it will run all the steps. And this is exactly the thing that you can do here, and add some steps in between so that you can pivot or unpivot to data. I think this is one of the more useful stuff in this functionality, because a lot of business data already comes in pivoted version, and for data analysis purposes, you have to unpivot it. So let's do a pipeline. So it will create a it was a data flow. In data flow, you are doing actual stuff with data. Here in data factory pipeline, you are orchestrating data. This is like the main difference. I will close it so we will have more space here. Let's say it's pipeline one. No, I don't care. Pipeline one is good. And concurrency is one of the things that I always recommend you use, because sometimes things take longer than expected. So, or another way of saying it is that projects usually end on time or after. So and the concurrency is important in the sense that, for example, when you are running some kind of transaction,